Good afternoon. We're going to ask for trouble starting this out. We're going to do a live demo, which I don't know what you were thinking, but you want to do it, so let's go ahead with it.
Well, they can't actually plug it onto the live
So
screen.
we're going to describe it. We're going to do it. It'll be like doing a demo on the radio. Let me lean over so I can see what you got here.
Well, let me show. I have an app, H2O app, which is like your ChatGPT, right? And you could actually try this on a ChatGPT browser app as well. We can ask it a question. Maybe you can try it live. How many R's are there in strawberry, right? And we're going to deliberately misspell strawberry with 5 R's, right?
It's more like strawberry.
Yeah. So out pops, comes in the word strawberry, as you've written, there are about 7 R's that comes up.
Seems about right.
And the correct spelling of strawberry, there are only 2 R's. Right, of course,
Checks out.
It's off, right? 2 R's. Because there are 3 R's. So now let's repeat the same question. And this time, turn on agents. So
a little button you can tap in the interface.
Simple turn on agents, which is like your equivalent of the deep research, right? And what happens now when you do this is it automatically generates code, Python code, to translate your English question to a Python simple 5-line program, right? And Python does
I don't know if that syntax is correct at all. I am not much of a coder exactly.
Well, in the large screen, you actually see the full code.
Looks plausible to me.
Yep. And long story short, it executes the code as well, and then comes up with an answer. The answer is here. It says,
in the word strawberry, there are 8 R's. This count was verified using 2 different counting methods in Python to ensure accuracy.
Right? So
professional.
Well, so essentially, it's using code. It translated English to code. And so we have a coding agent behind this. But there are several such agents, like Wikipedia agent that understands the chunks between changes in the internet, the web archive agent that looks at a room filled with these people and quickly can count how many investors are there, how many founders are there. You have agents that can essentially translate, agents that can do plots, right? So earlier we did a simple demo.
In the speakers line, this is another demo I was sure was going to get to break for him. I showed on my laptop screen a bunch of speed test results from testing Starlink on my Qatar Airways flight here. Took a picture of it. Not great exposure. The contrast was bad. And the agent app analyzed it and correctly plotted the ping times of this. Apparently they were lowest over Bulgaria. We don't know why. More research is required.
Yeah, it ended up with a nice plot, right? Which region has what level of latency, and it could distinguish between latency and upload, download speeds, and so on and so forth. But I think the long story short is Agentic AI is going to make coders, data scientists, traditional programmers a little more commodified, a little more less special in many ways. It's the purpose is always highest. If you have purpose, why is important, but right behind purpose is what. Like, what do you want to do with AI? And the what is domain experience, right? So if you have long domain experiences, you can translate that to language or English and say, you want to build that piece in detail, paragraph by paragraph. You feed this to Agentic AI. It breaks it down piece by piece to smaller agents, checks for any anomalies in thinking, the constant self-checking, generates code, and then runs the code and bursts any bubbles in thinking, which happens to humans as well, but bursts and then checks back, runs the right sequence, eventually making sure the accuracy of the report that you're expecting or the result you're expecting or the process you're building or the app you're building to be almost as if you hired a group of engineers to do, software engineers to do, or data scientists to do, or people to do. And that's a game changer.
So it's really interesting because this has been something people have been talking about for a long time. I'm going to show both their ages here. About 30 years ago, there was a company called General Magic that wanted to have software agents in a programming language called Telescript that would do things like book your flight for you and help simplify your life. Didn't quite pan out, although a whole lot of good ideas came out of that company. But now we do have people developing using these AI models to automate some of these things.
I mean, General Magic spawned off so many Silicon Valley giants, legendary companies, right? I mean, from it as well came some great founders. But I think the way I look at it is, back then we used to call AI expert
Software?
systems. Expert systems.
Yes,
right?
that's right.
Expert systems, and expert systems were basically rule engines. So the whole world we see around has been built with the same rule engines, whether it's a DNS rule engine, so whether it's a rule engine of what we should be doing at what time on this stage, right? But then came along statistical machine learning, which is pour data in and learn from the data, supervised training. But what we are experiencing now is a kind of a new, there have been 3-4 sub-waves in the Gen AI wave, right? The first wave was generate, imagine, create a lot of really new content or composed content. It may or may not be true. So the hallucination is a feature, not a bug in the Gen AI version 1, right? But you're in Gen AI, maybe almost V3 land. In V3 version 3, you actually have reasoning, which is logic, to coexist with language. So now you're beginning to create non-supervised training. So it's not supervised learning. It's actually logic-based or trial, error, and reward models. So you try something, just like child learns about new concepts. It tries, it fails, then it gets a different reward. If it succeeds, it gets a different reward. If it presents very well, it gets another reward, right? So what DeepSeek, if you will, did in this was uniquely is it created 2 different reward models, one for presentation style and one for thinking, right? And so as a result, you get very good separation between quality of the output and the accuracy of the output. Now, zooming out for a quick second, bringing it all together, reasoning and language and data now starts getting a little bit more interesting, right? You can actually take tabular data that runs the business with language data and bring in planning and bursting bubbles in thinking, right? The reasoning. And now you have a very nice way to break down a big problem, compose it to small problems, and each small problem implement in software. So Agentic AI is a game changer in that sense, because it's now bringing agency to intelligence. For a long time, we were all fans of intelligence, right? But when you democratize intelligence, so my core mission of my life has been democratizing AI like water, make AI ubiquitous. 12 years ago, we were the first .ai domain. So we democratized AI or intelligence. So AI is ubiquitous now. So then what happens when intelligence is everywhere? Then agency or courage to do things or dream and then act on it, which is, we are in Doha. So allow me for, the last time I was here in Doha, thank you Doha for hosting us, was for the World Cup, soccer. And the Dreamer song, right? We make it happen because we can see it. I think that vision of doing things because you can dream it, that agency becomes more valuable than intelligence for the first time in a long time.
So one interesting thing about your company, you've got a pretty wide range of models you can build these agents on. Which ones are people choosing these days? What advice would you give to somebody who's looking at that menu and you've got, how many, what are the?
About 2 dozen models, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. How do I choose?
So the smaller the model, the faster it responds, right? So latency. But of course, it can be very quick and also sometimes not as accurate. So what we found is distilling a large model, which again, the DeepSeek second technique, take 2, is you can use a large language model to train a small language model or feed it, distill it, and then fine-tune a small model, which means that you can replace a very large OpenAI-powered call center application with your company's purpose-built transcripts, fine-tune a smaller model. Say we make Danube, which is very small, 2 billion. You can get it 500 million, 2 billion, and 4 billion parameter. It runs on a phone offline, right? So you can take a small model, or Quen, or a Llama 8B, right? But then once you purpose-build train it on your content, now it's almost as good as the world's best model on your particular problem, right? So depending on cost, large models are more expensive, but make less mistakes, can do better planning. So in the planning section of an agent, you need the biggest, baddest models, and that includes like Quen 2.5, DeepSeek
So one is more of like a
V3.
startup cost, a capital expense of the model, and then there's the operating expense.
And once you get the model, once you get the whole thing running, you can then use distillation to optimize. So first, solve the problem, and then optimize. One of the things Silicon Valley didn't do this time around was optimize, because so much money gushed into it that the first model we built was good and expensive, GPT-3, and GPT-4 was so awesome, money gushed in. As a result, we didn't optimize the layers, like CUDA, how do you use memory, should you build Transformer the same way you're building it, so all of that stuff. As a result, like we saw our competition from open source come up. So going back to your main question, open source is a good option. It wasn't a good option 2 years ago. A year ago, we set out to make open source credible in Gen AI. And I think we have come to that point between Llama, between the models coming out of Asia, even Falcon in the region. They were one of the earliest ones who supported open source. So open source is a good option. O3, O1 models are pretty good, but Claude Sonnet is awesome for coding. So you kind of get this separation. O1, O3, good on vision. Claude Sonnet on code.
Very complicated menu we have here.
Yes, so there's benchmarks, right? So, and the benchmarks get interesting. So build your own benchmark. You can run it on our platform, your particular data set. And then finally, do not be, so one of my customers made this interesting quote, which was the junior engineer at this company, AT&T, one of the large telcos, basically said, last year it was in OpenAI we trust, and I think a lot of that has changed now. The people don't want to spend as much money with OpenAI, and be bold enough to try the new models.
So the notion of AI governance, it's all over your site. It's a big topic. I think just 2 hours ago, Mozilla CEO Laura Chambers talked about the importance of making sure that the agent that's working for you is not a double agent, that it's taking a bribe or whatever from, or a sales incentive from whatever airline site or whatever it's booking flights for you. How do you work to make sure that, your customers, that they're using these tools to get their desired outcome, not somebody else's?
That's a good one. I think you almost see the AI built by companies and companies built by founders amplify the native principles and philosophies of the founders, right? And the founding movement. Because that DNA captures a lot of things. And why?
Why was drawing any conclusions about Grok AI from Elon Musk's tweets?
I think there's a...
You don't have to answer that.
I mean, Grok actually was correcting some of, one of the biggest critique of human nature is going to be AI, right? Because we are currently thinking of AI needs to be governed. I actually feel like AI is going to actually govern, right? And it will probably govern much more holistically than the current governance or almost lack of transparency in the current governance, right? So to a large degree, we're at a stage where AI is getting really good. Once it becomes great, like give it 2 to 4 years, we will actually have AI governors, AI CEOs as well, right? So you're thinking a little less about them than they actually are going to be. But going back to your question, the principles of regulation to at the platform level has never worked, right? So it's regulate the application of a technology because the AI and technology, like the internet, have been changing. It's like the internet era, 1998, right? I wouldn't call it
It was
2001.
such a simpler time back then, wasn't it?
Yes, right? But it was crazy change, right? So back when the browsers, when now the LLM became the new browser or web server, right? So it's no longer the most expensive piece. In fact, the democratized everything. It's free, right? So now, if you think about that, at that time, we, the United States at the time made a good call that DARPA to internet continues to be free, right? But I think, and not very hyper regulated. I think AI regulation is application of AI regulation, which is banking regulation. But we already have good banking regulations,
So you're
right?
saying look at the output of what the
The
AI
use
does,
case, the
not
application, if you're using AI to give loans, then regulate the giving of loans, which has been, right, regulated for centuries. Then you say if AI is going to make a decision on someone going into a hospital or not, let the HIPAA rules, let the traditional healthcare benefits, Hippocratic principles apply, right? So it's the application of the technology because the technology is changing almost every day, right? So then don't try to it's like regulating AI is like regulating all of software, all of technology as we know it, and that's not kind of the right path. But that said, the AI needs to be safe, right? Sort of how do you make it safer? And using AI of sophisticated power. So I mean, you cannot regulate someone with a gun with a knife, right? So you want to take an even bigger thing, right? Or the police cars cannot be slower than the thieves' cars, then you're always going to be in trouble. So I think the way to think about it is use AI to govern AI, to check AI, to make the barriers of ethics or cultural nuances, so you don't lose things that are native to your culture.
Okay, last question then. We were talking earlier about skills a coder is going to need. Let's sort of tick off, what do you think are going to be the useful skills for a programmer as we move towards this agentic AI future where more of that coding work is done by the AI, whatever model you've chosen?
I think it's basically, so it's a great question. What are things that people need, coders need, is to integrate lots of code that's, in the past, you delegate a task and it comes back in 10 days or 1 day or a week, right? The human quantum of coding. Now you get in 10 seconds. So you got the code that you wanted in 10 seconds. You got the code from 100 agents suddenly, simultaneously. So integrating, and again, agents can come together to help that integration, deployment, then InfoSec, the end-to-end cycle. So that interesting space is a big space that's opening up. I think the bigger skill question is, what skills do humans need? And I think the bigger skills that we need is to be more human, right? Sort of how can we be more spirit machines that we started being, not kind of the steam engine made us really picky about time, like we're behind time now. And I think the AI is going to make us more empathetic and think about solving audacious big problems, not small problems.
That's a good takeaway. Be more human.
AI is going to make us be more human.
Good.
Human being is a process as well. And I think with a partner like AI, we're going to get super awesome.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Shukran.
Thank you.